All right, well, let's get this show started. Welcome to Coffee and Corona episode 4. I can't believe we've done 3 so far.
We have.
And we're both in cafes because last time we tried to do this, we ended up chit-chatting for 2 hours. Caroline made me cry, and so we just didn't have time to do the actual episode.
It's true, I did. It was tears of joy, though.
It was. I actually ended up getting emotions off of my chest for the 2 full days.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. It was good prep.
It is
I
good.
would say, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was actually just going to say one thing about the whole Corona thing and people being shut in and kind of shut off from each other is that people don't know what to do with their emotions. Like the emotional stuff is just like this roller coaster for everyone still. And it's good to just let your emotions flow and do their thing, because when you do that, then you can get back to equilibrium, some peace, some harmony with yourself. So that's what I did. I just let the emotions go. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that it was cathartic for me too. That we just had such a great conversation, and I felt like we had a really good exchange and we were helping each other. And it's just been, and it's sometimes that's hard to do when you're in this Zoom virtual platform, but it really felt like we were sitting like right across the table from each other.
We're in the cafes. I mean, I've got this is tea. And are you going to be coffee or Corona this time?
Well, I have a my virtual background. I have a frosty, not a frosty, but a chilled, icy, clear beverage, we'll just say.
Okay. So sounds like I don't need to put vodka in my drink then.
Yeah, so you may not.
I'll do it tonight.
Does vodka go with tea?
Vodka goes with everything as far as I'm concerned.
Does it?
I might even put it in my coffee from time to time. I don't, but I might if I was in.
Good.
Yeah, that might be gross. That might be really gross.
You said it goes with everything.
It does. It's like the water of alcohol.
Yes, if water tasted like lighter fluid.
Yeah.
So, gasoline.
Well, this episode is
about vodka. No.
It's about vodka, yes. Let's see. This episode is brought to you by Hope Spring Studio, which you just sold a happy painting today.
I did.
You should go check out her paintings. They are beautiful. They are colorful. They are so happiness inspiring. They will bring brightness into your life. So go check them out. Get yourself a painting. You're going to be adding some other products soon, aren't you?
Yeah, pillows.
Pillows, yay.
Yes. Yeah, watch out for pillows.
That'll be a nice thing to brighten up a room.
Right. Yeah. And while they're listening to this podcast, as it gets a little, as we lull people into relaxation, they can just put their head on a nice little, happy pillow.
Well, there's no sleeping for this episode because we are talking about being proactive. That is the theme for our conversation.
Yes.
So do you have any thoughts about being proactive?
I do. One of the things that I did to prepare for this was I Googled procrastination, and I Googled procrastination, and how you can click the link that says, do you want news? Do you want shopping? Do you want this or whatever? So I clicked news, because what I was hoping for was that I would find some amazing news story that said, woman procrastinates and magically gets $1 million in the mail.
What kind of news is that?
And I did not find any news stories like that. I know you're shocked.
That would be amazing, though.
What I did find quite, I guess not surprisingly, is I found lots of news stories about research that's going on about why it's so hard to get work done right now, and why people procrastinate, and how procrastination is not, that people equate it with a work thing. And what it is it is it is actually more about emotions than it is about work. And I can even find the news story. You talk about that a little bit, and let me find the BBC link to that story, because I think our viewers, I should say, will find it interesting, and we can put it in the chat or something.
Yeah, you share your screen or something.
Yeah.
All of the above. I was gonna take that opportunity to share the talking points, but you've got something, so go for it.
Well,
and I don't know what I'm talking about, but the procrastination and emotions part, I can chit chat about that on my own while you search, I guess.
Yes.
Because the thing about procrastination, I do talk about that in my shamelessly self-promoting now shortcut to happiness, because I talk about procrastination in there because it is emotional and it's all based on fear. And the thing about procrastination is, we can be afraid, because when you talk about fear, it comes in the three forms of fight, flight, or freeze, right? And so if you are talking about procrastination, that's usually the freeze response to fear. And we kind of hope that by doing nothing, our problem will just go away. Or, there might be a combination of fears going on. Like we might be afraid that we're not good enough to solve the problem. We might just not want to have to face the confrontation of it. And so procrastination is that freeze mode of fear response, where we're like, we do nothing in the hopes of the problem going away, which is not reality most of the time. But, yeah. So did I chit chat long enough?
I think so. Yeah. Let me do a screen share real quick, and I think the BBC is in agreement with you.
Oh, I like that.
You need to allow me to share my screen. Host.
Well, that's one of those automatic settings that won't go away. There, you have the power.
Power. I'm like a Power Ranger.
I was thinking He-Man, but
Go Power Ranger.
Any superhero show will do.
Okay, do you see this?
I do.
Work life.
Yep.
So this story, this BBC work life article, is from the 14th of May, so not too long ago, and it's about addressing the real reasons that you procrastinate, and it is it's about the task we're putting off is making us feel bad. Perhaps it's too difficult, or we're worried about failing. I think that ties completely into your fear, what you talked about.
Absolutely. Fear of failure.
Yep, exactly. And one of the things this is just one article of many that I discovered that it's talking a lot about, many of the articles that I saw that were about procrastination, and obviously the flip side, which is being proactive, I think, to a great degree, is specifically targeted to right now, because people are having such a challenge on how to manage their work and life in the midst of the pandemic and what we're dealing with.
Yeah. There's another part of it too, that a lot of people say, oh, I concentrate so much better when I've got the pressure on. There's a lot of people with that kind of an attitude. And so they'll procrastinate because they think there's that adrenaline rush that helps them focus. And there's probably a lot of truth to that. I'd love to see studies on that too. But most of the time, I really, when I talk to people and they procrastinate, and I think it, when I procrastinate, um, yeah, it's usually a mixture of fear. There's, sorry, I had another thought and now it's gone from me, but procrastination, I think that's really fun that you dove into that as like the opposite of being proactive.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, share your talking points a little bit because I think I started thinking about it.
Now do you see them?
Yeah. So when you say that procrastination and laziness are black holes that drag us into vortexes of self-defeat, I would say they're also black holes of YouTube videos
Well,
that you can just watch endlessly while you're avoiding your work.
Yep, distraction is an enormous tool for procrastination because it helps you feel busy without actually accomplishing anything.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes I wonder, like when I have a big project that I want to get to, if I allow myself to get distracted on other things, because I'm procrastinating with purpose, because if you feel purposeful, then you feel good about yourself. But then at the end of the day, you still have that thing. And the thing about procrastination, the more you do it, the bigger that shadow looms on the horizon. The darker the shadow is, the bigger it is, the scarier it gets. And so it's funny because when you look at it, people avoid it because they're afraid. But then when they have to finally face the music, it's still that fear response. Like the adrenaline they get, that super focus, it is still a fear or threat response that they're thriving off of. And so it is self-defeating. I mean, that's really not lifting yourself up. You're doing something with probably good. You're doing something that's probably good, but with the wrong motivation, the wrong energy behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that the things that there have been important things that I have procrastinated about, and then when I have actually done them, 99% of the time it's been like, oh my gosh, that was not so horrible, or that's like the worst thing. The worst thing is like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And more often it's like, oh my God, why didn't I just go ahead and do that? And sometimes it's something that's, like you put off quitting a job, or doing, something that just sounds like it'd be just such a challenge and a big life change. And then when you finally do it, you're like, oh my gosh, why did I wait so long to do that?
Yeah. And why do you think you have that feeling? I mean,
Me personally,
yeah.
I'm a person that does a lot of advocating for change and going for it. But when it comes to doing it myself, I have a hard time. I don't like change. I don't like I don't really, we talked the other day, we had such a great conversation about travel. I love to travel because I get to go someplace temporarily, but like the thought of moving someplace else is kind of, is scary. Whenever I've made big job changes or relationship changes or, things like that, they're very, I just get very used to the way things are. And I just try to, for whatever reason, I just think like, okay, maybe I can fix these things the way they are and just make them better so that I don't have to do some kind of big uncomfortable change. I think it's about comfort. I don't like being uncomfortable.
Well, can we talk about that? Because, I'm a big fan of baby stepping. I mean, What About Bob, for instance, is one of my favorite self-help movies of all time. And that's one of the concepts in there that is actually a useful concept, baby step your way to whatever it is. Because when we think about if we're at 0 degrees and we want to get to boiling, that's 212 degrees that we got to get to if we're talking Fahrenheit. And that's a lot of degrees.
That is.
But we usually tend to think of things from 0 212 or 100 for your Celsius, 0 to 100, let's just do Celsius because that, in one step,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what's scary to us is that big picture of, how I have to get there, and it's like, well, you don't climb a mountain in one giant leap. You
Right.
take a step at a time. And so if you just think about, well, what can I do in one step? What's one step I can take to get there? Well, then it gets a lot less scary. The fear factor of it all
Uh-huh.
gets way less because it's like, you know what? And this is where I start. I usually start something big with planning.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I do it is because planning it's not scary. It's like I can think about it. I've been dreaming about it and I've been thinking about it already, but let's just get some of those thoughts on paper into like a plan format because that's a totally non-threatening step to take.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's a very important and necessary and usually the first thing that you should do if you're doing something big. So, I mean,
I would argue it's an important thing to, even when you're doing something small. So like, for example, nobody's going to be able to read my handwriting. But even when I do, so today, this was what I needed to do today for like my map stuff. I had to, can you see that?
Nope.
So hold on. Well, that's all the time we have, folks. Anyway, it's a poor visual aid given my virtual background. But essentially it is, I had like 2 hours worth of work I needed to do, but it did require some kind of complicated processes for this map that I'm making. And so I wrote down all of the steps, and then I got once I got into the project, I realized that I didn't even need all of those steps, but I had thought through the steps that I not only was I going to do, but the things that I might need to do. And that way, that left very little to chance. I was already anticipating things that might happen. And so I think you're right that when you stop to make a plan, and that was just a plan for 2 hours of my day. That wasn't even a life plan, a big change or anything.
But I like it, because the thing about a plan is that it organizes, it clarifies, it helps you see gaps that might be missing that if you're just going on the fly, and that's
Speaking of a fly, I have a fly. I have a fly that has a plan to die, by the way. That's buzzing around my head. So, dear friends, if you were watching me flail around, I am listening. I'm engaging.
I'll send Cody over to catch it for you. He's a great fly catcher for some reason.
He's got great fly catching skills.
He does.
I know. Where are my dogs right now?
It's the most bizarre thing. I've never seen a dog catch flies, but he loves it. He's good at it. He always gets the fly. It's weird. Anyway. So I'm, as a fellow entrepreneur, I'm a big fan of plans, just like you are. And the thing is that I like is that it gets to do the thinking for you. Once you've got it down on the plan, you just focus on one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you relax about what you're doing because you are systematically baby stepping through the process. The other thing that I love about a business plan or a plan in general, because I'll do a plan when I really want to get strategic about my writing. If I'm writing an article for medium.com or something, I will write out the outline because that helps me fill in the gaps of like, well, that's a nice thought, but where's the meat? I'm vegan, but if I'm writing, where's the meat of this? Where's the almond? Where's the almond?
Where's the mushroom?
Right. And that helps me fill in the gaps. But like with a business plan or a good plan, I'll be going and I'll have the thoughts of like, oh, I need to do that, or I'll start worrying about something else. And it's like, I don't have to worry about it. It just goes on the plan.
Right.
And the plan does the thinking for me. The plan does the holding of all the different parts for me. It does the worrying for me so that I can relax up here and really focus. Now, for me, instead of getting the adrenaline rush, what works for me is to give myself a good chunk of time instead of being distracted and doing a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if I set aside the chunk of time and I plan it, that and I give myself enough time to like really dive in, that's when I thrive without doing the whole adrenaline junkie approach to
Mm-hmm.
procrastinating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess we're inadvertently talking about being proactive.
I know, I think we are. We've gotten into planning and proactive. I wanted to ask you about one of these bullet points here that talks about being proactive helps us overcome fear, grows courage, and builds self-esteem. Could you address the self-esteem part?
When speaking for myself, when I do the procrastination, um, it's usually from a place of low self-esteem. I'm putting it off because I probably think I can't really do a good job at it. But when I'm doing the procrastination, I'm also beating myself up about putting it off again and again and again. That's a way of self-abusing for me, and for a lot of people, I can confidently say because I've talked to them. And so procrastination is actually a self-defeating cycle where you just a lot of people just use that put it off again. I'm such a procrastinator. Put themselves down. Exercise, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
practice of self-defeat. Whereas if you take a baby step, if you do something about your whatever it is today, and you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh, well, I didn't get it done, you can still look back and say, I did some of it though. You know, I practiced it, or I took a baby step, or I did my planning, or I worked on it a little bit in this way. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually look back and you can, instead of beating yourself, you're patting yourself on the back for having done something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is enormously encouraging for your self esteem. I mean, it's enormously esteem building um, because, again, you're doing this to yourself instead of self flagellating, right?
Right. Instead of doing this to yourself. Bring out your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for elaborating on that because I was trying to connect. I was trying to connect that and you really helped me
Okay.
make more
Good.
sense of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you start that positive cycle, then you get more courage of, you know what, I can do it a step at a time. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, we tend to think from 0 to 100 and we're like, oh, I can't do that. We see that big thing and it's like, oh, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, here's something I was thinking about as you were chatting is like, I was like, if I look back at the things that I do now without even thinking about it, and I look back 10, 15 years to before I started my big ass journey of, trying to make my dreams come true, become the person I wished I was and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, back then I would have looked at this thing of, picking up the phone and making a simple phone call. I would have had anxiety about it. I would have procrastinated about it. I would have had to sit with a piece of paper and write down what I was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of those people. I would have to write down, well, what questions might they ask? How would I respond? Um, just so that I could make the phone call. Making phone calls it would create severe anxiety for me. And just as a simple example, but there's things that I do now that other people are like, no way, I couldn't, how could you do that? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, aren't you nervous about it? I'm like, yeah, but I don't let that stop me. That's not the thing. Is like, I'll be nervous whether I do it or don't do it. So why not be nervous and do it and
Yeah.
get that step forward instead of procrastinating or just deciding not to, giving up before I even try, anyway.
Right.
But it's like, maybe I'm not 100 degrees, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
50 degrees now.
Yeah.
I'm way past where I was
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah. The point that you make on here about waiting for the perfect circumstances or the perfect moment. the if you wait too long, that moment that moment will be the moment will entirely an opportunity could have passed. So
Yeah. And why do that when life is so short? Why do that?
yeah,
Um,
fear is why.
yeah, I understand that, and I was in that for probably most of my life. But where I am now, it's like, ugh. When I find myself bumping against that ceiling or that
Hmm.
wall, it's like, here's that old friend of, are we going to do it or not? And it's like, let's embrace the adventure. Let's see what we can accomplish. I mean, let's dive into this thing we call
Yeah.
life. What were you going
What
to say?
about what about fear of confrontation?
What
Because
about?
sometimes well, I mean, so I'm not I would say I am conflict averse. I will engage if I have to, but more often than not I will try to avoid. And so sometimes, like oh, let's say like going back to the conversation that we had, I can't remember if it was last week or a couple weeks ago, where let's say the phone bill example, where there's something wrong with your phone bill. So you get on the phone with the carrier, and you want to talk about the bill and find out what's the matter with it. And if you don't like doing things like that, you're probably going to put off doing it. And if you keep putting off doing it, and you finally get up the gumption, to call 6 months later about, your bill back in September, and then, they say, well, there's a 60-day window to, to dispute this. You've, by procrastinating because of fear of conflict and so forth, you've lost your leverage in that situation, right?
In that situation, yeah. How does confrontation fit into the?
Well, I'm just saying that it's I don't know.
Well,
No, it's another element of fear. That the proactive thing to do would be, if you see something the matter with your plan, you call, you keep your cool, like we talked about, and then maybe you don't get a satisfactory answer, and so you have a plan for if you don't get the answer that you believe is correct. Your plan is to then talk to the manager, and then you just kind of keep going until you hopefully get a satisfactory resolution. But that takes all kinds of attitudes, like persistence. That's one of the things we were talking about. Patience, and it also takes being proactive.
well, you've basically asked and answered your own question. So are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
I'll address it in my words, but I'm just going to reiterate what you just said, because a lot of times, in my experience, most people hate conflict. They want to avoid conflict or confrontation at almost any cost. And yeah, they will avoid the confrontation until they miss out on a window of opportunity to stand up for themselves. And so I think one of the things is that people dread a confrontation because they kind of think of that as the only available tool for approaching the situation and talking with the person. And what I've found and practiced, what I've practiced and found, is that usually if you bring other tools to the table and you don't see it as a conflict or a confrontation, it doesn't become one.
Hmm.
And what I think we talked about this when we talked about the attitude of being assertive, because a lot of times people think of being assertive as being aggressive, and that's not what it is. Being aggressive is where you're being confrontational, whereas being assertive is standing up for yourself. And a conflict or a confrontation requires two sides at least. So if you go into it non-confrontational, not looking to pick a fight. You go in it ready to treat the other person like a person rather than somebody to just give you what you want. You are ready to listen to their words, listen to their needs, listen to their whatever is going on with them. And when you treat them like a person who's not being confrontational, you're actually just standing up for yourself and saying, this is what I need. And I'm going to keep standing for what I need until you treat me like the person, like a person, and acknowledge me, validate me. And usually, if I don't get what I want from the person because they just don't have the tools to give me what I want, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or technologically speaking, I hang up the phone and I call again until I get somebody who can give me what I want. And so anyway, getting back to the confrontation, if I treat it not like a confrontation, other than I really just treat it like, you know what, I'm standing up for myself, letting them know what I need. I'm there to have a conversation with them. Whereas if you go into a confrontation, that tends to be the only tools that you use. And so you, as you were talking, you shared other tools that you can bring to the table or to the conversation. And, so you can just say, hey, you know what? One of the best tools is just asking for help. I have some people in my life that are really funny about it because they cannot ask for help. They just can't bring themselves to ask for help, and they don't realize this about themselves. And so they whine, they complain, they bitch, they moan, they turn it into this ungodly, uncomfortable, just sometimes just awful situation that's so miserable that they find, whoever they're bitching and moaning and whining, complaining at, just gives them what they want because to get them to shut up. Whereas it's like, just ask. So if you call the phone company and you
say,
got
hey, I need your help on this.
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
it.
Yeah, they are more than, almost always they're just like, oh, they need my help, and that's fulfilling for them, helping people.
That's really good. Now that is a good piece of advice.
See what happens when I ramble? There's Flexigold in there somewhere.
There is.
So I love that you started this conversation with procrastination. I was totally not expecting that.
No?
The opposite of proactivity. Because I mean, usually when I think of proactive, it's like, go be proactive. But that's almost like the toxic positivity sometimes. It's like, just go do it. Nike was just toxically positive to the whole world for a decade. Just do it. Well, what if I don't wanna?
Yeah. It's 4 a.m. and it's cold outside. Go bleep yourself.
Yeah. Sometimes being proactive is sitting with whatever those emotions are that are causing you to procrastinate and say, hey, what are those fears? What am I really worried about? Work with those, do some self-healing. And that's actually proactive, even if you're not working on the thing you're avoiding. You're baby stepping your way.
Yeah, I agree. And it's that's proactive in sort of the long view, that thinking about your life in terms of what's going to give me joy and how am I going to get there, and is by worrying about these, like the whole don't sweat the small stuff kind of thing, is by worrying about these smaller things or perseverating about, different issues. Is that really going to get me down the road to my ultimate goal of being, of a happier life? And I think the answer is no, that the proactive side of it is thinking about, what can I do I know I go back to this a lot, but it's like, what can I do today, this week, this year, whatever time period that will make my life happier, and it'll make other people's lives happier. And then, and that's the, and that's the proactive side of it. I think of that as being proactive.
Yeah, you're talking about the kind of visioneering side of it again. And I think that's actually really important because I don't know, may have different thoughts on this, but I think everybody has these hopes and dreams, these passions, swirling around inside them that they don't necessarily know what to do with. I talked to somebody recently who talked about what he wanted to do, and he kept referring to it as a pipe dream. That's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. This is a very intelligent, very capable person talking about what he wanted to do with the bigger picture of his life as a pipe dream. And I'm like, well, why would you put your dreams in the well, I can't use that word, in the trash rather than giving it a chance? And I think, and what he said in return was that he's surrounded by people who tell him that that's what he should do. It's like, be practical, be realistic. I mean, have you ever faced that in your life of, your dreams or what you wanted to do versus being realistic?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm asking you personally, I'm putting you on the spot, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I've had to adjust those dreams. That
Okay.
yeah, I think yeah, they're dreams that I've had. For example, my art is just now, I've loved art and I've loved making art my whole life, but it's only really just now that I consider myself like an artist, that I'm producing art sort of in a regular way and getting it out for people to see and buy. And and that that took a really long time, and for a long time that felt like a pipe dream that nobody, and that nobody makes money making art. That's the standard line. And I remember when I wanted to start my own company, my mom was one of the most positive forces in my life, but even she was like, oh, don't you think that's a little unrealistic? And why would you want to, give up the stability of an 8-to-5 job when, for something that may, that might not, that might not work out. And that's like an example of something that I did that did work out. I did start my own company, and I've been successful at it. And that's something that that it did take planning and patience and all of those things that was required, and courage, like the bullet point says. And yes, and that's definitely been a self-esteem builder. So I don't know if I really answered your your question.
Oh, you absolutely did. I hope this is okay. Tell me to stop. I'll be right back. But,
okay.
But today was an important day for you in regards to what you're sharing. And congratulations on the successful business, by the way, because that can be hard to do. And there are a lot of messages about those things of 9-to-5 job is stability. Well, I've learned firsthand that it is not stability.
Mm-hmm.
It's the illusion of stability. It would be
right.
nice if you lucked out and got a stable 9-to-5, but we've found time and time again that that's usually not the reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also not that fulfilling. It might be nice to go into work day in and day out and have a check every other week or so, and but is that a life? Is that really living? And I don't think so, because I'm going to show people the calendar that you gave me. And like this one's my favorite. Caroline painted this. And your artwork is just so full of life and color and beauty. I think it's fantastic. And to me, that speaks of what's in your soul right there. And I think it's more important to let the light of our soul shine than to do a daily grind for little pieces of green colored money, paper. It's just paper that you trade for food. So anyway, I just have to show a few of these things to people because they are so bright and colorful. I couldn't create that myself, and so I appreciate the talent and the spirit and the vibrance that comes from within your soul. That's what the world really needs. And so it's like, that's your genius. People need to let their genius out. And if you make money and can make a living, awesome. But if you can't make a living, that's no reason not to let your genius shine. I mean, that's a terrible message that goes around the world. It's like, oh, well, if you can't make a living, then just don't do it. And I think that's a huge reason people feel sad, frustrated, pent up, unfulfilled, because they're not letting the genius that's inside of them shine. And so, I think you should keep letting yours shine because it just fills the world with color and vibrance. It's amazing to me.
Oh, thank you, PJ. That's really, really, that's really, really great to hear. I appreciate that so much.
Hope Spring Studios, everyone.
Yes. I don't really know that it's genius, but it is, it does come from a place of joy. So.
It is genius. It absolutely is genius. So even if you don't know it, I do. So
oh, thank you.
No equivocation about it. And by the way, you are doing a GoFundMe, right?
I am. Yes.
Okay. Tell us about that.
So the GoFundMe is to acknowledge the frontline folks that are working in hospitals, and so with what we want to do is we're generating a certain amount of money that with every $50 that we generate, we'll send packages of custom cards to healthcare workers in hospitals.
So some of those beautiful paintings that I showed on the very poor.
Yes, yep, those are the ones.
Those will be some.
I could do a little. Let me just since you brought it up.
Beautiful, colorful. Let me.
Yeah.
This.
I will. Happy to show it off.
Yes. Now, with the coronavirus stuff still going on, I think people need to not let go of the momentum of what we've been doing for the past couple of months, mm-hmm. which is thanking our healthcare workers, thanking our, essential workers, what we consider essential, thanking our store clerks and the people who maintain our stores, keep them clean, work on the social distancing for us, mm-hmm. because a lot of people aren't very good at that. And, oh, wonderful. Yay. It's doing good.
Yeah. Yep. We've got $55 raised so far. So that is a package of cards that will go out to a hospital.
That is awesome.
And then we've got some different levels that people can donate. So for every $50 contributed, we'll donate 100 postcards to a hospital or care facility. Then we have another package which is printed, these really beautiful keepsakes that are foil printed postcards. And I don't know if, I know you've seen them, PJ, but for those of the folks that are watching this, if you haven't seen them, they're really, really gorgeous. So
yeah, they're shiny.
Yeah. And then the care package number 3 for 150 contributed. They'll get canvas wraps of all 4 of the paintings that we have. I guess do we not have the paintings?
You can't do it on GoFundMe. Their format's very
There
limited.
they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the link to the website.
Yeah.
Good. This will get people to see the website too. Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are the 4 pieces that that I picked out to be the cards, and I think probably, of course, the dog one is probably my favorite of the 4.
I love that one. I actually want to get myself a print of that.
Yep. That can be arranged.
It will be arranged. Maybe stepping my way to it.
So anyway, so thanks for bringing that up, because I did want to bring more attention to that, and we do need to keep up the momentum, because like anything, as as the tides change and the news stories change, we don't want folks to forget all the people that are just working so hard and diligently day after day for us.
And they will be probably for a while. So,
Yeah.
if you can't afford a painting, you can go donate to the GoFundMe and get some beauty and color and vibrance into the lives of people who are working for our well-being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yay.
So that's being proactive.
It is being proactive. And I think I think baby stepping again, I keep going back to it just because you just can't overestimate, whatever, the power of the little that you just can't guess the power of all the little things that you do each day for something good, something positive, something kind, that with time it adds up. With time, all those little things that you did added up. I feel so much more confident and happy about my life today, and it's not because I went from 0 to 100,
right,
in just a short space of time. It's because I took a step each day. I did a little bit of work each day. I forgave a little bit more. I expressed a little bit more gratitude. I offered kindness to someone. I was kind to myself and my own thoughts a little bit more each day. And now, as I look back, it just feels like immense, massive piles of kindness and joy and gratitude and forgiveness and freedom in my life. And, yeah.
We have a guest here, PJ.
Who's a guest?
It's like a guest, a guest visitor.
Oh, it's so sweet.
She heard about people wanting to be nice and kind and take baby steps, and so she felt like it was her time to chime in on that.
All her steps are baby steps. She's just
they are.
Oh, look how sweet she is. I love her.
Yeah. This is Twiggy, everybody.
Twigs.
Oh, and that's the other dogs.
The bigger one. Well, do you have any other thoughts for Coffee and Corona, proactivity, procrastinating?
I don't think so. I think we've hit the high points. What do you think?
I think it was good. I think we had a good chat. You shared some really good questions and thoughts. I thought we've had a good little hangout here.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciated what you had to say and your words of advice about baby steps and asking for help for people that you're on the phone with trying to resolve a bill. I'm going to use that in the very, very, very near future.
I hope a lot of people use that, actually, because those people are working too, and they don't go to work to fight against you.
Right.
They go to work to help people and hopefully get that paycheck to go home and buy whatever. But yeah, that's and I appreciate all the stuff you brought about procrastination and why we might not want to be proactive. Like, there's reasons. It's not just that we're lazy. We're not just lazy. There's stuff going on worth looking at.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks. Well, I guess I'll see you next week and we'll talk about something else.
Thank you for hanging out with me, and thank everyone who listens to this for hanging out with us. And we'll talk with you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.